And I want to start with an uncomfortable truth, because somewhere along the line it became OK to equate Jews and Israelis with the actions of Hitler, especially in this country at the moment on the left. Bradford MP Naz Shah has been suspended from the Labour Party for social media posts in 2014 saying Israel should relocate to the US and that the transportation would save them some pocket money. The issue isn't whether Jeremy Corbyn should have suspended her earlier, though. It's how an educated woman, someone who at the time was working to enter our parliament, could believe these things and think it's OK to glibly share them. And Naz Shah is not alone. She's the 6th Labour member suspended or excluded for anti-Semitism in the past 8 weeks. Vicky Kirby, another Labour activist, thought it was OK to tweet this. What do you know about Jews? They've got big noses and support Spurs. Lol. In a way, I'm glad these views are being outed and aired in the cold light of day. But Labour suspending Naz Shah or Vicky Kirby does nothing to cure the real problem, that of a deeply rooted prejudice about Jews, which is making yet another comeback. But the question really is, what on earth is going to be done about anti-Semitism? And why is it making a comeback at all?
Well, I agree with you, because if she's saying this in public, God only knows what that woman is thinking in private. That really is frightening. And that a British MP, albeit that she wasn't at the time, but a British MP months before can talk about transportation, use the word solution involving people from Israel, the bulk of whom are obviously going to be Jews, is absolutely horrific. My concern with what you say is it's almost as if it's just arrived. I fear that it has been woven into some aspects of British life for too long, and we should actually... The only thing to celebrate out of this is that we can actually see how big the problem is. Labour has a massive problem. It's probably not actually restricted to Labour. There are probably plenty of anti-Semites in all the other parties, all of them. But Labour's got a massive problem, I agree with you. But how would you legislate against it? What would you do? This is a concern. Because I think you'll find everybody around this table says, absolutely wrong, won't put up with it. How do we stop it?
Well, I mean, that's why I wanted to raise this today, because, you know, first of all, I should say, as a Jewish person, I'm embarrassed to talk about this. You know, Jewish people don't want to be victims. They don't want to have to say, oh, you know, and actually Jewish humour is the way to deal with it a lot of the time. We've got pretty bleak humour if you look at the history of what's happened to the people. You know, we always wear our hats because we've always got to move. Whatever you want to say, you know, that's a good one from Fiddler on the Roof. But quite seriously, I raise this because dinner party anti-Semitism is also a massive problem.
Have you been a
country.
Victim of anti-Semitism?
I have had people say to me things that they shouldn't have said. I've had people make jokes about how tight people are with money who are Jewish. I've had people say things about Israel to me as if I am responsible for the actions of Netanyahu. In a very bad moment, I've had somebody say to me, Jews think differently, don't they?
But is that part of the misunderstanding of ignorance of people, whereby, and I'm talking lots of different people, in the sense that to be anti-Israel or anti-Israeli foreign policy then allows people to jump to the conclusion that you're being anti-Semitic. And they're two very separate things. And certainly I'm not excusing the ignorance of somebody in public office would have towards stereotyping a group of people.
But what you've just done is what usually happens with these debates. You've done the classic, what about people who want to be critical of Israel who then get accused of being anti-Semitic? I'm not saying that.
No.
What I'm saying is the modern definition, the definition of modern anti-Semitism is where either Jews around the world are blamed for Israeli actions or Israelis are compared, those in government and in the country, to Hitler. That is actually the modern definition. It's accepted by the UN. It's what it is. But what always happens in these debates, and that's why I'd really like to move away from this, is people saying, and first of all, you also said foreign policy there. I think most people are critical of Israel's domestic policy. But I think what always happens in these debates is I have to make people feel comfortable in my presence criticising Israel. You know what? Criticise Israel all you want. What I'm actually saying and what I want to know from people who've been in this country, Rachel, maybe you've got something to say about this. You know, you've got, obviously, I'm sure, some interesting dinner parties that happen in your house. You know, why is it still a thing? You know, why is it here? Yes, it may have a modern face, but there's still some classic tropes going around, and that seem to be banter.
It was interesting in your introductory comments, you suggested that there's not just institutional racism in the Labour Party, but it's sort of baked into our national culture. I I think that's a bit strong. I've lived and worked in Israel myself. People often assume I'm Jewish because I'm called Rachel and I've got a big nose. But
There's another classic, yeah.
No, it's true.
Well, I'm a Jew in disguise because I don't look like
according to
Goebbels'
Naz Shah. Naz Shah, in a sense, answered Graham's point, which is being anti-Israel being anti-Semitic? She admitted in her own apology that it is, because Israel is the only country of Jews.
Well, respectfully, her initial apology was, I regret the words.
Yeah.
So let's be...
She also has...
you don't regret the sentiment, love, you regret the words.
She accused herself of anti-Semitism, having criticised this retweet of a image which showed Israel being transported to the middle of America. She's answered her own question.
Can I just break in there, though? It went worse. The reason why it went worse, it wasn't just criticism of Israel.
She said Israel was acting like Hitler.
Exactly.
She did indeed. And what you say, what can we do about this? The Labour Party has a problem. There's been too many instances of open anti-Semitism in the Labour Party to say it's got anything but a problem, and Labour is a cold house for Jewish people now. They have tried to do this. The problem was Corbyn forgave her, accepted her apology, and then he suspended her, which shows the party is in a muddle and they are guilty, possibly, of what you suggest, which is institutional racism.
But taking it away from Labour just for a moment, because I understand what you're saying, maybe it's strong. I don't walk down the street and feel scared. I mean, I actually know that Islamophobia is a much bigger issue in a way in this country at the moment. And plus, you know, Jewish people do have the advantage, and certainly as a Jewish woman, I don't wear a hijab, I don't wear a headscarf, I don't wear anything that identifies me necessarily beyond some of the sort of racial stereotyping of how large one's nose should be or might be. But I'm interested to understand, because people who are part of a political party are just our population. You know, they're not a sort of separate species. So I don't know if, Michelle, you've had any experience or you have any views on how we could solve this issue.
Well, I don't think that there's a place for any kind of racism for anyone to hold those views that have got any role in public office. So for me, it's very clear, if you have those views and you're seen to have those views, you should be out straight away. There shouldn't be investigations and suspensions then coming back in and going back out. To me, if you hold those views, you shouldn't be representing...
In public or in private?
As
Nick said, I think what people are saying around the dinner tables of...
But then, if you're in a public office and you feel like that against any group, I don't think you should be representing the public. But what I was interested in, this is perhaps my naivety, when you did your intro, you said that you feel like it's making a comeback. So would that indicate to you? Do you actually think that it was diminishing and it had pretty much gone? Or do you think that is what's happening now, less that it's making a comeback, is it that it never went away, but actually what's happening now is we've got so many more channels of communication. Social media is so big now that anyone's views are getting much more of an airing than they perhaps used to.
So, I mean, I think that's interesting in itself, because Simon Sharma, the historian, let me just get this right, said it used to be a Zionist problem, now it's the Jews. So if you had a bit of an issue, it was hidden behind, and maybe it's, as you say, with technology, we can sort of see what people think more. But also the Justice Secretary, Michael Gove, did a speech on this recently where he said, modern anti-Semitism finds a home in too many people's hearts. And I thought that was a very interesting point. Just before I come to you, Nick, you wanted to say something on that?
I just was going to say that it's cloaked. When Michelle said it was cloaked, and it's not as cloaked as it was now. But I do agree with what Graham said. And look, I'm very proud to say I'm a trustee of CST, which is the big Jewish security group that's funded by Gerald Bronson. Community is funded by Gerald Bronson, and I'm very honoured and pleased and proud to do charity work for that. But Graham is right. When there are incidents in the Gaza, the number of anti-Semitic incidents, the number of daubings, the number of attacks on bar mitzvahs and schools and Jewish old people does soar. These people are so Neanderthal, they cannot see the distinction. So I know you jumped at Graham a little bit, but the essence of what he was saying is true. That publicity fuels the anti-Semitism.
And it's the fact that actually... what is the root of this sentiment within the Labour Party? And when you go back to years, you think about some sympathies with the Palestinian cause, which is fundamental to some Labour Party activists, Labour Party members. Now, absolutely, jumping from that, which I think is opinions that should be aired if people have genuine concerns about that, but jumping from that to then using the sort of language that is discriminatory and prejudice is offensive. In football, if a football player or someone linked to football uses that sort of language, they will get banned, a ban of minimum of 5 games and mandatory education for using discriminatory language. So football is way ahead of politics.
This kind of
in this
language also
situation.
completely banned in Germany as well. So I agree with it should be banned from public life. It has absolutely no presence here.
Well, I hope it goes out of private life.
I'll tell you what,
as
I've
well.
learned something. Football players are educated.
So
know
look,
Graham
I'm
is.
going to
Graham
really
is.
get you now. I'm going from
How dare you?
I'm going from synagogue to demagogue.
Oh, okay.
Took me all day to work
Thank
on
you.
that.